Welcome to Rapid Fire Wednesdays, Q&A for corporate immigration professionals. I'm Kimberley Robidoux, a partner in our San Diego office, and I'm joined as always by Miki Matrician, co-managing partner of our Boston office. How are you doing this week so far, Miki?
Doing well, Kim. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm amazed that we're both on the East Coast when we're filming this. So that's great. So this week we are discussing how to prepare for holiday travel in the current immigration climate. Believe it or not, we are approaching the holiday season and in some cultures, wedding season. So what does this mean? It means international travel by many individuals, including foreign national employees. And with such travel, preparing and planning in advance is critical for returning to the United States for both the employees and the global mobility and immigration professionals. This time of year, we get a lot of questions about international travel, and planning is critical in order to avoid issues. While travel, and especially international travel, can be stressful, there is an added layer to that stress when the individual traveling is a foreign national returning to the United States. Miki, what are you seeing as some of the concerns that your corporate clients and their foreign national employees have about international travel?
Yeah, I think the first critical thing is to make sure that people have passports that are valid for at least 6 months beyond their return date to the US. And then for people on temporary work visas, they need to have a valid visa stamp in their passport in order to seek entry into the US. And it's a good idea to check the visa to ensure that it's valid for return to the US because some have a limited number of entries. There are exceptions to this rule, and we will talk about that in a little bit. In the meantime, if a foreign national doesn't have a visa stamp that's valid and they don't fall under an exception, then it's important to plan weeks and sometimes months in advance to submit a non immigrant visa application to the US consular post abroad in order to apply for a new visa stamp to obtain prior to returning to the US. And each US consular post is different with their wait times for an interview. And as a reminder, the current administration now requires interviews for every visa application. There's no more interview waiver or so called Dropbox applications anymore. The other thing, too, that's new is that people have to go to their country of residence or nationality to attend the interview. They can't apply as a third country national as they used to be able to do. And if the foreign national has a petition pending with USCIS, they definitely should check with Immigration Counsel before finalizing international travel plans, especially now with the $100,000 fee under the H-1B proclamation.
Yeah, that's right. In addition to potentially prolonged wait times, particularly at high volume consulates, global mobility and HR should know that any visa application may be subject to what we call administrative processing. So, if the foreign national's name is similar to or is a match with someone else who is on a security list, or if their job is in a field that is considered a high security risk, for example, in a particular high tech field, then they may be more likely to be placed in administrative processing. It could result in a delay of weeks or even months for the visa stamp to be issued. So, if someone has previously been subject to administrative processing, then there is a likelihood that they will have to go through this process again. In those circumstances, we do recommend that the individual plan accordingly and hope for the best with respect to not having to go through the process again, or at least hoping that it is shortened with respect to the time of the administrative processing. But knowing and planning in advance really helps with expectations and business operations as well, especially developing a backup plan for business continuity.
Totally agreed. And consular officers are closed for both US and the local holidays, so it's important to factor that in. And having a contingency plan based on a company policy for working from abroad is a great way to deal with these potential issues if the company policy allows for it. And mobility or immigration teams will need to coordinate with our tax advisors too to check in about tax implications if the remote work from another country is prolonged. Tax is definitely outside of our area of expertise, but I just wanted to flag that issue. In terms of the exceptions to the visa requirement, Canadian nationals are exempt. For people traveling to only Canada or Mexico for less than 30 days, they may be eligible for what's called automatic visa revalidation, which means that people can return to the US even if their visa stamp has expired. They do need to have a visa stamp in their passport, so an expired visa or a visa from a prior status that was last used to enter the US, and they must have a valid I-94 document for the status they held when they left the US and are returning in the same status. It's also important that the individual has not applied for a new visa stamp while in Canada or Mexico, because if they have, then they need to wait to receive that new visa stamp to return to the US. It's a good idea to check in with Immigration Counsel before relying on this automatic visa revalidation exception because it's complicated.
Yeah, and we typically see a lot of individuals that graduate from a US university in San Diego. They work based on OPT and then sometimes STEM OPT, and then they go right into a change of status to H-1B. So if they want to travel to Tijuana for Taco Tuesdays, for instance, which is a real thing here in San Diego, when they return to the US, they must present their valid passport with their expired F1 visa stamp and the new H-1B approval notice that has the new H-1B I-94 document on the bottom of it. So when foreign nationals return to the US, they also need to present additional documents at Customs and Border Protection. So for people whose status was obtained through USCIS, they should have a valid I-797 approval notice in hand, which they would need to present upon their return to the US. For individuals who are on L1 status as intercompany transferees and they secured approval at the US consulate, they would present an endorsed Form I-129S. And then for E3 and H-1B1 visa holders, they should present their certified labor condition applications. Canadian nationals, as Miki mentioned, are visa exempt, so they should present their relevant documents. And for Canadians who obtain their TN at the port of entry or at the border, they should have an admission stamp in their passport from their application with Customs and Border Protection. And then for Mexican nationals that obtained a TN visa stamp at a consular post abroad, they should have their valid visa stamp and potentially an admission stamp from their first entry into the US with their current employer. In some instances, they might be eligible for the automatic visa revalidation that you mentioned, Mickey. And in that circumstance, as you said, we do recommend checking in with Immigration Counsel before relying on that just to make sure that they're going to be all set with the appropriate documentation coming back to the US.
The other document to consider carrying is evidence of continued employment, such as pay stubs. If the individual applied for a visa and submitted an employment verification letter, obviously present that at CBP. In general, foreign nationals should expect to go through enhanced security checks at Customs and Border Protection. Any foreign nationals who have prior arrests or any other encounter with law enforcement may be subject to increased scrutiny, so they should check with Immigration Counsel before leaving the United States. And the other thing is that CBP is increasingly checking electronic devices, so we would recommend being prepared for that as well. CBP does have the authority to inspect devices, and if they decide to conduct the search, non citizens will not be admitted into the US unless they submit to the search, unlike with US citizens. And they're not permitted to search anything that's saved in the cloud. So before people travel, it's a good idea to ensure that any sensitive items are moved into the cloud. And before the inspection, it's a good idea to sign out of all of the apps and even power down devices. I usually tell foreign nationals to write down details of any search, including the name and badge number of the CBP officer who conducts the search, and document the questions they're asked as soon as the search is over so that they have a record of what happened. And global mobility and immigration teams may want to check in with their employees too regarding company policy on, company owned phones and laptops.
Yeah, really good advice, Mickey. And then once back in the United States, foreign nationals should check their I-94 records to ensure that they were admitted for the proper visa category, as well as to ensure that the expiration date matches their immigration documents. So CBP may truncate the I-94 document to match the passport expiration date, but if it is truncated to the visa expiration date, that warrants a CBP correction in many circumstances. So it's critical to check the expiration date on the I-94 when entering the US. And then also check for family members as well. Those are key to check for all foreign nationals. And with that, I guess that wraps up this week's Rapid Fire Wednesday. We will continue monitoring legislative, regulatory, and court developments as well as any new agency guidance, and we will bring you updates as they are released. As always, for the latest updates to the immigration landscape, follow WR Immigration on LinkedIn, as well as Miki and my personal profiles for breaking updates and insights. We also transcribe each Rapid Fire Wednesday episode and share it through our weekly newsletter. You can always subscribe via the link in the video description. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time. Great to see you, Miki, as always, and have a great rest of your week.
You too, Kim. Great to see you.